Steam curled from the coffee cups, blurring the winter light streaming through the cafe windows. She sat near the corner, her hand resting gently on her daughter's, guiding the small fingers over a muffin's warm paper wrapper. The girls' eyes darted to the bustle around them. Clinking spoons, murmured orders, but never to the voices. Across the room, a man in a faded work jacket paused mid-step, watching. He didn't stare long, just long enough to notice the way the girl's lips moved without sound. Then he approached, slow and careful, setting his coffee down at the next table. When he lifted his hands, his fingers began to move, not awkwardly, but with the practiced grace of someone fluent in her quiet world. The CEO's breath caught. No stranger had ever spoken to her daughter like that. Sunlight spilled through the wide front windows of the cafe, slanting across polished wooden tables and painting warm gold over chattering customers and the soft clink of coffee cups. The scent of cinnamon scones and brewed espresso floated through the space, comforting and sharp, like a favorite sweater pulled over after a long, tiring week. A little hand, soft and curious, reached for a sugar packet on the table. Nora's daughter, Lily, 7 years old, wide-eyed and mute, sat across from her mother, fingers twitching with the beginnings of a question she hadn't yet worked out how to ask. She didn't make a sound, but the spark in her eyes was loud in its own way. Nora, CEO, heels swapped for weekend sneakers, watched her daughter. She was still trying not to cry. 20 minutes earlier, a stranger had spoken to Lily in fluent, casual sign language as if it cost him nothing. Just something a dad might do for a child, or for a child like her. The moment had stopped the air in Nora's chest. She hadn't expected kindness like that, unprompted, unearned. He'd introduced himself as Mason. And even now, with Lily tapping careful signs into the air, cheeks flushed pink from excitement, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that a door had just opened into some unexpected chapter of their lives, one where warmth came easy. Across the room, Mason returned to his own table, his son tugging on his arm, still looking over at Lily. "Can we sit with them, Dad?" the boy asked, not quietly at all. Nora caught Mason's eyes. He gave her a questioning tilt of his head, friendly, not pressing, a helping hand if she wanted it. She nodded. A shuffle of chairs, a refill of coffees, and suddenly they were four at a table made for two, new company, new currents in the air. Lily and Mason's son, Caleb, as it turned out, clicked instantly. He didn't know sign, but Mason helped fill the gaps, turning Lily's sparkling hands into words that Caleb followed with wide-eyed curiosity. The two children crowded around Mason's phone screen to pick toppings for a pretend pizza in a game app. When Caleb laughed, Lily grinned too, eyes shining, the way kids do when they forget they're strangers. And Nora sat there, her fingers around a warm coffee cup, unsure what to do with her hands or her heart. "So," Mason said, voice low and gentle, like he understood she might not be used to small talk, "how'd you and Lily find this place?" Nora cleared her throat. She didn't know what she'd expected his voice to sound like again, maybe sharper, more confident in the way most people tried to be around her when they knew her job title. But Mason was soft-spoken, present. "Honestly, it's the one place she doesn't ask to leave after 5 minutes." He smiled, "Then it's a good place." Nora smiled back, tentative. "Best coffee in this zip code helps." "I thought so," Mason said, sipping from his own mug. Though Caleb mostly picks cafes based on whether they serve muffins the size of his face. That's his metric. From across the table, Caleb beamed. "Giant muffin, critical." Lily giggled silently, then shyly she signed me too. Mason translated for Caleb. Caleb held up his hand for a high five. Lily hesitated, then gave him one, shy and proud. Something unreasonable twisted in Nora's chest, hot and unfamiliar. She fought so hard for Lily. Hour-long IEP meetings, specialists, a new school, a nanny who knew a little sign, though not enough. And still, her daughter had so few peers, knew only the grown-ups who orbited her carefully, lovingly, but with gaps. But now there was this little boy with crumbs on his face and no patience for barriers, and this man who heard soft needs without needing them shouted. Kindness shouldn't feel rare. But when it came like this, unasked for, casual, it cracked something open. Mason asked, "Can I ask, how early did you all know?" The question wasn't clumsy. It wasn't even really a question, not in the way people usually asked. "Did you know? Did you try X therapy? Did you ever?" No, Mason's tone was shared weather. "Around 18 months, Nora said, quiet. She stopped babbling, she'd smile, she'd play, she just wouldn't talk. I thought maybe it was a phase." He nodded. "We found out when Caleb was 2, delayed speech, short attention span. They gave me all kinds of acronyms. I learned to love the ones that didn't scare me." The children whispered in their own way. Lily with her hands, Caleb with his questions and gestures, their conversation developing its own strange rhythm. "The world isn't built for different kids," Mason said, his voice softer now. "So we build spaces inside it for them, right?" "Yeah," Nora said, barely audible. And there it was, thick in the chest. The emotional beat that creeps in when you don't know how to protect someone you love and someone reminds you you're doing better than you think. There was a long pause, not awkward, just full. Outside, an early autumn breeze nudged a wind chime at the corner of the cafe entrance. Nora watched Lily scoot closer to Caleb, sharing a smile with pure, unguarded ease. She turned to Mason. "Do you do this often?" "Be a human parent tornado? Most days," he chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "But no, I mean helping only when I can. Sometimes people don't want it." "I did," Nora said, "even if I didn't know how to say it." A breath passed between them. For a moment, silence felt like safety, not a gap. Then Mason watched Lily sign quickly to Caleb. "She just asked what he wants to be when he grows up," he said with a smile. "What'd he say?" Mason turned to his son. "Caleb." Without pause, Caleb answered, "A zookeeper or a ninja or pizza." Lily laughed, a pure, delighted breath laugh that made every head at their table turn. Nora blinked. Her own daughter's laugh always caught her by surprise. It was so rare, so fragile. Mason grinned. "Pizza, strong choice, hard to beat." Nora shook her head, smiling now. "You might have to sign that one to her." Now, Mason winked. She got it. The afternoon aged gently, light fading into amber. New customers came in. Old ones trickled out. And still they stayed, 2 parents, 2 kids, this little handmade moment of stillness inside so many fast, sharp days. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the feeling of a hand near yours, just in case you wanted to hold it. Near the end, Mason checked his watch. "We should head out before I lose him to muffin sugar sleep." "Same," Nora said, scooting her chair back. "She'll crash as soon as we hit the car." Outside, they lingered by the cafe doors. The wind picked up, cool and fluttering. Mason turned to Lily and bent gently to her level. He signed, "Your mom is amazing. You're lucky to have her." Nora blinked, watching. Lily grinned. Then she surprised them both, signing back, "I know." Caleb tugged Mason's sleeve. "Can we come back next weekend?" he asked. "Meet them here again." Mason looked at Nora. There was something in his eyes, not pressure, a possibility. She hesitated. And then, for the first time in months, she said yes to something without needing to first map the risk. "Yes," she said slowly, "I think we'd like that." As they parted ways, the street stretched before them in amber glow and shadows. Nora held Lily's hand, walking to the car. Her daughter was quiet, but not in her empty way. Full instead, calm, like maybe something had finally clicked. In the rearview mirror, as she buckled her seatbelt, Nora glanced over at Lily. From the back seat, Lily signed to herself softly, as if practicing. "Friend." Nora didn't say anything, just let the word echo in her heart. And she didn't notice, in the side mirror, Mason watching from across the street, for a second longer than most strangers would. Because somewhere between sugar packets and high fives, promises had been made. Quiet, soul-deep ones. And not all of them had words yet. But all of them had weight. A breeze caught the hem of Nora's coat as she stood beside her car, watching Lily draw invisible shapes with her fingers against the window, half doodles, half signs, like she was sketching something only she could see. The last of the sun had vanished behind rooftop lines, leaving the air with that in-between chill of early autumn. Light jackets weren't cutting it anymore. Still, Nora didn't reach for the heater when she started the car. The quiet was too intact, too rare. Lily turned her head, sensing the eyes on her. She blinked once, then smiled. A soft, understanding smile, like she was saying, "You felt it too today, right?" Nora returned it a little slower. "Yeah," she murmured under her breath. "I did." As she pulled out of the cafe lot, the dashboard lights blinked on orange and cool blue, but Nora barely glanced at them. Her thoughts were still back at that table. The smell of apple something still fresh from the oven. Caleb's chatter. Mason translating Lily's signs like it was the most natural thing in the world. And him. God, how unexpected he'd been. The warmth, the ease. People didn't usually talk to her like that. Not without knowing who she was first. Not women, and especially not men. Most people read CEO and saw a wall they decided not to climb. They admired from a distance, congratulated her wins, then carefully stayed out of her way as though power and loneliness chose each other. Until today. Until Mason. She tapped the steering wheel with one finger, caught in a thought before she registered it. Would he really come back next weekend? Did he mean it? Or was it the kind of farewell you gave someone so you didn't have to deal with the weirdness of saying goodbye? But then she pictured the way he'd looked at Lily, not at her success, not her name, not her choices, but at the grinning, giggling girl she'd built her world around. That felt real. And real was rare. That night, after Lily had bathed and curled up in bed with her owl-shaped nightlight and a picture book slightly askew on her lap, Nora sat beside her, stroking back wild hairs from her daughter's forehead. Lily, half asleep, reached out and signed something soft, sloppy in her tired fingers. "Friend again?" she asked. Nora leaned down, pressed her lips to Lily's crown. "Yes, sweet girl, again." Then she turned out the light, the two of them adrift in the hush of a house that, for the first time in a long while, didn't feel too empty after 8 p.m. At his place across town, Mason watched Caleb try, badly, to stack plastic dinosaurs into a pyramid before they all collapsed in a heap of teal and orange limbs. "You know that's not architecturally possible, right?" Mason asked, leaning on the doorframe of his son's room. "They're magic dinos," Caleb said with a yawn. "They teleport to balance." "Right, my bad." But Mason was only half listening now. He thought about how Lily had watched Caleb, how her hands had said more than most kids managed with words, how she'd lit up like a 1,000-watt bulb when someone actually listened. And he thought about Nora, the steel in her posture, the softness barely tucked behind her eyes, like she didn't quite trust anyone not to leave. She reminded him of someone he used to be married to, only stronger, sadder maybe, exhausted in a way people didn't see until they'd tried to do life mostly alone. And he knew the look on her face when he'd asked if they'd come back. It wasn't doubt. It had been hope. Raw, startled hope. Maybe the kind that hadn't been safe in a while. Caleb, already half asleep, murmured into his comforter, "She was nice." "Who's Lily or her mom?" "Both," he yawned. Mason nodded like a promise. "Yeah, they were." His phone buzzed on his nightstand, a notification from a parenting group he never participated in anymore. But then another buzz. A message from Nora. Just 5 words. "Thanks for today, it mattered." He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then typed, "It did, let's let it matter again." Sent. No read receipt, just silence. But silence wasn't always empty. Sometimes it was waiting. Saturday crept up slowly, routines giving way to tiny anticipations. Thursday, Nora caught herself hunting for Lily's favorite dress early. Friday, Mason cleared his usual table at the cafe when no one was looking, just in case. Saturday morning, fog lingered low, draping itself like cotton over the sidewalks. The kind of day that promised warmth if you reached far enough into it. Nora and Lily walked in right at 10. Lily's hair was in tiny braids today, tipped with candy-colored elastics, and she ran ahead toward their usual corner with none of her usual hesitation. Until she saw the table was empty. Nora saw it too. Empty chairs. No dinosaur backpack, no blue windbreaker. No Mason. Lily turned unsure. Nora crouched beside her. "Hey," she said gently, "maybe they're just running late." But her stomach was doing tight, unhappy flips. Stupid, she told herself. One kind moment doesn't owe you a new chapter. Then the bell above the cafe door chimed, and Lily's head snapped toward it. There they were. Caleb barreled in like a whirlwind of elbows and energy, waving a sheet of stickers in one hand and clutching a muffin in the other. Mason followed, coat half-zipped, breathless but laughing. "You'd think we were on a game show," he said once they reached the table. "This one nearly tackled me to make it on time." "I told you we'd miss Lily," Caleb declared. "You were already late," Mason replied, mock serious. Every second was critical. Lily beamed, bouncing on the balls of her feet. Nora just shook her head, smiling, unwinding somehow in the warmth. They sat, coffees were ordered, muffins dissected, stickers traded. The four of them fell back into each other like no time had passed. Only now there was more. Mason showed Lily a couple new signs. Lily taught Caleb one for dragon. Nora caught herself laughing more than once, a quiet, startled thing she didn't correct. Between sips of chai and scattered crumbs, Mason leaned toward Nora, voice low. "I have a feeling," he whispered, "our kids might decide we're all best friends now." "Dangerous," she murmured back. His eyes twinkled. "Too late." She bit her lip to hide the grin. "Maybe." Outside, the breeze picked up, tossing leaves in lazy little arcs across the sidewalk. Inside, a small world was building, breath by breath. No declarations, no loud signs. Just a steady, patient stitching of something new. And neither Nora nor Mason saw Lily's hands beneath the table, still signing, slowly, carefully to herself. Words she'd learned just this week. Safe. Family. Begin. The next cup of coffee went cold before anyone noticed. Because none of them were leaving just yet. And none of them wanted to be the first to break the spell. The first rain of the season arrived like a soft confession. It swept through the gray morning in hushed curtains, matting leaves to sidewalks, ticking gently against cafe windows like an unfamiliar lullaby. Inside, the warmth held. The lights glowed low, gold against cool glass, and the sound of the world outside softened to a murmur. Nora stared into her coffee, steadying herself. The air smelled like cardamom and wet pavement. Lily sat across from her again in her favorite window seat, raincoat peeled off, cheeks pink from the cold, her fingers dancing silently with anticipation. Mason was late. Only by 12 minutes, but she noticed. And she hated that she noticed. Lily didn't seem anxious. She was working intently on drawing something, two stick figures holding hands. One had long hair, the other had a mustache. Between them, a dog. A completely invented one from the looks of it, all ears and lopsided spots. Nora watched her daughter's face, serious, focused, safe. The storm pulsed against the windows. They'd done this nearly every Saturday for 6 weeks now. Almost like a tradition. Almost like... The door jingled, abrupt and familiar. Mason stepped in, a little damp despite his umbrella, eyes quick to scan until they landed on them. On her. Nora almost smiled, almost. He moved with a slight rush, tugging off his coat and shaking out droplets as Caleb darted in behind him like noise wrapped in a red hoodie. "Sorry, traffic and puddles," Mason said as he slid into the chair beside her. "Some fires you just can't fight." "It's okay," Nora said, trying not to sound too relieved. But she was. God, she was. Something about him being here, about them being here, felt like leaning into a rhythm she hadn't known she'd needed. A slow song she didn't mind falling behind on. He nudged a takeout box across the table, peace offering. Inside, a cinnamon roll, the really good kind, the ones the bakery only made in limited batches. Nora blinked. You remembered. He gave that quiet half-smile, the one that barely broke the surface. You mentioned it once, kind of offhand. I figured remembering makes me about 40% less annoying when I'm late. Lily reached out wordlessly to tear off a piece. Caleb made a face of mock agony and muttered, "Unfair." You had your chance, Mason said. The cafe buzzed around them, a comfort now instead of a blur. Familiar baristas, warm paper cups, background hums of distant conversation. Nora realized she didn't scan the room on alert anymore. Didn't feel the need to tuck her private self behind her CEO armor. Not here. Not with him. They talked about small things, easier things. Lily's love for giraffes. Mason's disastrous attempt at helping Caleb with a paper mache volcano. The time Nora accidentally sent Lily to school wearing mismatched shoes and hadn't realized until pickup when the teacher smiled too hard. She didn't care, Nora said with a shrug. Honestly, I think she was proud. She should be, Mason said. Fashion icon status. Laughter bloomed between them, not the kind that chases pain away, but the kind that makes you forget it was there for a minute. And then, somewhere between shared muffins and rerouted weekend plans, the children drifted off to a corner nook, a little reading area the cafe staff had set up with blankets and beanbags, which left Nora and Mason alone. Well, alone together. He leaned his arms on the table, close but not invading, watching her with something a little more open. She noticed the small crease between his brows. What? She asked, voice softer than she used at work. He hesitated. Then, you ever get the feeling something good is happening before your brain fully catches up to it? She blinked. All her instincts flared, the ones sharpened on deadlines, decisions, difficult boardrooms. Anything uncertain throws you. Anything vulnerable feels like letting down the gates. But her heart, annoyingly, recognized what he was really saying. Not a declaration. Not a demand. Just truth laid bare. I think I'm afraid if I believe it, I'll lose it, she said before knowing she would. His gaze didn't falter. If it wavered at all, it was only with understanding. I know that fear, Mason said. I lived in it longer than I should have. A quiet beat. Then, like something cracked open gently between them, he added, but sometimes the good stays, just because it wants to. Nora didn't say anything. She wasn't ready to believe fully. But she didn't pull away either. Later, Lily came back, cradling a book in her arms, and signed slowly but clearly next weekend. Caleb jumped in without waiting, obviously. Mason nodded at Nora. The question was hers to answer. She locked eyes with Lily, who now waited with a kind of hope that was careful, but not afraid. Yes, Nora said, and almost felt it settle inside her. Feeling wanted. Feeling steady. The rain kept coming, light and rhythmic. Mason helped them to the car, umbrella shielding Lily as she climbed in. Nora stood under his arm once her daughter was settled, close without decision. She didn't mean to linger. But she did. And when she looked up into his face, Mason just nodded as if to say, "You're allowed to stay a little longer." Their breath fogged in the cold. He didn't reach for her hand. But he didn't need to. Because she'd already begun holding something real. Something forming slowly, unshakably, like the start of an unfolding season. They parted. But something stayed. Like warmth in your coat after you've gone inside. Like a promise that hadn't been spoken yet, but would be. Soon. The week passed slowly, like fog that wouldn't lift. It wasn't a bad week, just the usual. Meetings, numbers, emails in all caps pretending to be urgent. Nora moved through it like a woman in high heels and higher walls, efficient, focused, a force. But on Wednesday night, after Lily had gone to bed and the house settled into its stillness, Nora found herself opening their text thread. Mason, found a giraffe sticker in my pocket today. Tell Lily thanks, might be my new good luck charm. She hadn't replied. She came close, typed, deleted, not because she didn't want to answer, but because what came next felt like it mattered. And she wasn't sure she trusted herself not to ruin it. By Friday morning, she hit send. Nora. She actually picked it out thinking it looked like you. Tall, silly hair. It took less than a minute. Mason. Offended but impressed. Tell her she can join the roast team anytime. And hey, same time tomorrow. Nora's pulse skipped in that tiny, electric way it had no right to. Nora. We'll be there. Saturday was all soft sun and drying sidewalks. By the time Nora and Lily arrived at the cafe, Mason and Caleb were already waiting, sipping from mismatched mugs, the kind with chipped handles and once funny quotes faded with time. Mason had his glasses on today. It made him look more serious, more thoughtful. Or maybe that was just how Nora was looking at him now. Lily ran ahead, backpack bouncing. Her braids had sunflower clips today. She wore them just because she'd said they made Caleb smile. Nora followed slowly, watching, not just Mason. Watching herself. She was careful lately, in a way she hadn't been in a long time, not guarded, hopeful. And hope she knew was heavier than it looked. Scoot in, Mason said, moving a napkin holder to make space beside him. She did. No hesitation this time. And 2 hours passed like 20 minutes. The kids disappeared into their world again, one where stories were shared with half-finished signs, quick giggles, and stickers somehow stuck to everything. And Nora found herself just sitting, without multitasking or overthinking or checking her phone like she usually did. What's her favorite season? Mason asked somewhere between bites of a crumbling scone. Lily's fall. She says the trees look like they're talking. He breathed that in, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I can see that. She used to think the wind was how the sky whispered. Mason looked over. And you? What about me? What's your favorite season? She paused. The truth, she didn't know. She hadn't slowed down long enough in 10 years to pay attention. I think maybe this one, Nora said finally. The one happening right now. Mason turned his cup in his hands. That's a good answer. It was a simple exchange, a nothing moment. But it settled inside her, with more weight than 1,000 boardroom victories. Later, after goodbye hugs and promises from the kids to bring cooler stickers next time, Mason walked them to their car again. Lily climbed in first, singing quietly to herself in the soundless hum she always carried, a song made only of hands and heart. Nora turned to say goodbye, expecting a wave, a smile, something light. But Mason didn't rush. There's something about this, he hesitated. Nora, I don't want to step where I'm not invited, but this, he gestured softly toward Lily, the cafe, their Saturday rituals. This is the best thing I've stumbled into in years. Her breath caught. The street was quiet. The first few orange leaves clung trembling to the trees. The moment teetered, too much too soon, but she didn't run. She looked up, steady. You're not where you're not wanted, she said quietly. Then almost a whisper, you haven't been for a while. The distance between them shrank, not in inches, but in uncertainty. He gave a subtle nod, didn't lean in, didn't press, just stood there with her in the weather of that truth. Then he reached into his coat pocket. Almost forgot, found this at the farmer's market. A tiny wooden giraffe. Clearly handmade, slightly crooked, a paint-smudged smile. She can add it to the collection. Nora took it, fingers brushing his. Thanks, she said, but it meant more than that. She didn't know how much, not yet. That night, after Lily had long since curled into blankets and sleep, Nora sat on her bedroom floor with the wooden giraffe in her hand. She set it on the nightstand beside a photo of Lily at 4, holding a balloon that matched her shoes. She stared at it a long time. before her phone buzzed. Mason, one line only. Mason, you make Saturday feel like home. She didn't reply. Not yet. She just held the phone against her chest, heart loud, the room quiet. Outside the window, one single yellow leaf let go from a branch. And as it drifted, slow and certain through the darkness, Nora knew. She wasn't falling. She was beginning. Sunday morning arrived with a hush. Gray sky, slow light, the kind of day that held you gently as if trying not to wake you too fast. Nora stood barefoot in the kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug, the other pressed against the counter for balance. She didn't usually pause, especially not on Sundays when her brain ran with the clock, school prep, staff pings from East Coast clients, the whiteboard in her office already planning Monday behind her back. But she was still thinking about Mason's message. You make Saturday feel like home. It kept replaying in her head, uninvited but welcome, quiet but impossible to ignore. Lily wandered in, blinking sleep from her eyes, her giraffe pajamas bunched around one ankle. She didn't speak, of course, but Nora didn't need voices anymore to feel close to her daughter. She handed over the mug of warm milk without asking. Lily took it, then reached into the oversized hoodie she wore to sleep and pulled out the tiny wooden giraffe Mason had given her yesterday. Love, she signed seriously, then lifted the giraffe's wobbly head and made the sign again. Nora's breath hitched. Yeah, she said softly, I think he does too. It rained again on Tuesday. A sharp, impatient rain that scratched against the windows and soaked the edges of Lily's drawings as she walked them from school to the car. Nora had left work early, an unusual move prompting a slew of emails and curious glances. She didn't care, not today. Lily clutched her folder of artwork to her chest in the back seat like treasure. And as Nora settled into the driver's seat, her phone buzzed. Mason. Hey, okay to call? If not, can sign later. Call? God, when was the last time a man asked permission to call her? Like her time mattered and her boundaries weren't optional. She glanced in the mirror. Lily was flipping through her drawings, mouthing words to herself happily. Nora took a breath and hit accept. The phone rang once. Hi, Mason said, voice a little too fast. Sorry, I know we're both busy and look, I know this is out of the blue, but I wanted to ask something. Okay, Nora said, heartbeat already picking up. It's not huge, I promise, it's just Caleb's school's hosting a little harvest event this Friday. Hey Bales, sighed her way too many kids in face paint. He asked if Lily could come. He got this wild idea about a friendship bracelet booth, and apparently she has elite sticker taste and must approve the designs or the event will be doomed. Nora laughed before she could stop herself. That tracks. I wasn't sure, Mason added, cautious now. Didn't want you to feel. She'd love that, Nora said, and so would I. There was a pause on the other end, then relief. Okay, cool, great, it's totally casual, bring a jacket and maybe boots. Nora smiled into the phone. See you Friday, Mason. Yeah, see you. She hung up, pulse fluttering. Are we going to see Caleb? Lily asked from the back seat, fingers signing quick with hope. Nora smiled in the mirror. Yes, we are. And Lily beamed so wide it lit up the gray inside the car. Fall leaves swirl at their feet. The harvest festival has thinned to a few families packing up face paint stations and folding chairs. Strings of paper lanterns sway in the breeze. The warmth from the cider and laughter lingers. Nora walks slowly, hand in hand with Lily, the little wooden giraffe peeking from her daughter's jacket pocket. On her wrist, the friendship bracelet, slightly fraying already but strong. Mason and Caleb fall in step beside them, walking quietly through the glow and the hush of a perfect, ordinary evening. No one is rushing now. Close Owen. Lily holding the pumpkin she painted like its fragile treasure. She glances up at Mason, beams, then signs something. Mason signs back with ease, fluent now, clear, smooth, as if he's known the language his whole life. Nora watches them. Nora VO. There are some people you wait for your whole life, even if you never knew you were waiting. They reach the car, wind whispers, cold now. Nora opens the trunk, gently setting the pumpkin inside. Mason stands nearby, his hands in his coat pockets, eyes steady. She turns toward him. A pause, longer than the others. The kind that could become anything. Mason, quietly, I'll be here every Saturday. A truth, a promise, no pressure, no rush. Only care. He doesn't step closer, doesn't ask for anything more. And somehow that's everything. Nora holds his gaze. Then silently she nods. Not just okay, but yes, to this, to more. Lily wraps her arms around both their legs in a sudden fierce hug. Caleb laughs and joins in, awkward and adorable. Caught in the folds of that messy, imperfect embrace, Nora closes her eyes and breathes. Noravo. You don't always know when it happens, but sometimes life lets you begin again softly, quiet as a child's whisper, strong as a promise kept. Not for headlines, not for anyone's approval, but for the warmth of two small hands. Two mugs, one quiet table. And love finally arriving without needing to knock. Slow PULLAWAY, wide shot. The four of them under the soft fall lantern light. Not a family yet, not officially. But almost. And almost is a beautiful place to start. Fade out. Music swells, gentle, hopeful piano. Closing title card. Sometimes the heart finds home in the most unexpected places. Every Saturday, every small moment together.